Okay, this is the Oz report for May 19th, 2025. Let's go look at our overall dashboard to start with. Moon materials still dropping quite significantly. Our 4 and our 8 moon materials, we addressed this during the MER chat earlier. It's, certainly our 4, it's something that CCP addressed during the March 12th impact by increasing the fuel costs for Metanox there, but it hasn't had much of an impact. Still, the market for especially R4 is flooded, and so until we see any significant changes there, I don't think that is going to change. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is hampering manual moon mining, certainly, or the profitability of it, and so we continue to see very, very cheap moon material prices. And while R32 and R64 used to, in the early days of Metanox, used to still be very expensive because there was a lot of demand, now we're seeing across the board rather cheap or cheaper moon material prices, and that is certainly a long-term effect of Metanox. But that also means cheaper tier 2 Tech 2 ships, Tech 2 modules. So it all has advantages and disadvantages. If we're looking at minerals overall this week, we're down 4% on minerals. We went into more detail again on the MER stream earlier, so you can find that on YouTube or on the podcast tomorrow. But overall, let's have a quick look maybe at the market trends. So overall, Pyrite is down 12% this week, which is great. We were looking at the Pyrite availability here earlier on stream, and if you look at the graph here in the background, you can see that clearly Pyrite levels were extremely low all of April, and so the last 2 weeks we've seen a slight improvement. Yes, it's prices are 12% down. There's a little bit more hitting the market, but still, with a price hovering around 25 or 30, Pyrite is extremely expensive right now, and I would expect there to be some sort of intervention there. If we believe CCP Okami, what he has said is that the March 12th patch impact or specifically targeted Morphite, but they're having a very close look at R4 moon materials and what impact that is having on the market. And Pyrite is simply one impact that Metanox proliferation in R4 moon materials is just going to have. And so, yeah. That's minerals there. If we're looking at Morphite clearly it's down since it's down about 50% since the patch, so still very, very cheap Morphite, but that is as intended, and it's probably a good space for it, in at least from a CCP perspective. And still we're seeing expensive Zydrine and expensive Pyrite, as I said. Overall, minerals down 4% this week. We're at, interestingly enough, currently the mineral index is at 100, which means that we're exactly at 52-week average. That just means that over the year we saw a massive spike, and we're moving towards more of the average now. I think what CCP would be aiming at clearly is a price level below 52-week average, because the MPI was spiking for most of the year. And so if we're going to have CCP Ratati on stream on Wednesday night, so we'll certainly talk to him about the MPI and his expectations and his impressions of the current mineral prices in EVO 9. Other than that, it's interesting that gas, gas is overall expensive. We need a lot of the gas for the drought production that we are currently seeing going on. Also, some of the faction ships, and so actually they removed a lot of the demand in the economy for these. But like, look at especially fullerenes. That's wormhole gas. We saw that in the MER that wormhole gas huffing has increased. So have prices. You see that fullerenes are 26% over 52-week average. So clearly there's a lot of demand. And now wormholes are finally, starting to move into mining more. We saw that in the MER numbers, but I think in order to supply the current demand that we're seeing from dread production, we need more, or prices are going to continue to rise. So very interesting to see what's going on there with gas. Interesting also what we're seeing from abyssal materials. So, if we're moving over to the graph here, let's see. Various abyssal materials are spiking because of the new Tech 2 Triglavian ship that we're seeing, the new Marauder, the Le Chac on steroids, basically. And so we're seeing 0-point field manipulators. Ever since the announcement, they have gone through the roof, and there are now, especially today, what are we? We're at sell prices of over 300,000. This is up from about 100,000 that we have seen, and so clearly lots of demand there. But not only for the Tech 2 material, also the Tech 1 material, 0-point condensate, crystalline isogen 10. They're all rising in price because they're all needed for that production. And it's not just the Trig Marauder that is causing this demand, but we're clearly also seeing a lot of demand coming from Kikimoras. So if we're looking at items that are trending up this week, the Kikimora, you can see that here. Not only are the Kikimora raw materials increasing, as we just discussed, but also there has been an increase in demand for Kikimoras in the last few days, and that all of that together means that we're looking at Kikimora sell prices of 63 million. So even if you're producing these, you're still going to make a lot of money producing them right now if you can supply the market quickly. There's some other items that are impacted by all of this, and for example, that's would be a light entropic disintegrator too. That's the Tech 2 weapon that you're going to put on a Kikimora. Also here, increased raw material prices from abyssal material demand, but also increased demand from increased use of Kikimoras. And so overall, it's a good time to be in Triglavian content because there is a lot of demand for the raw materials and the blueprints. If we look at down here, the abyssal filaments, you can see those are also trading 37% above 52-week average, and that is a representation of the popularity of that content right now because it is very profitable. So if we're looking at the items that are trending, you can see a lot of the filaments in there as well. For example, the cataclysmic gamma filament here up 24% in price this week. And if you're looking at some of the other ones that are in short supply, chaotic dark filaments, for example, there's only 0.4 trade days available. So the very popular filaments here are quickly selling out, and they're rising in price. So overall, good sign. Getting different parts of space involved in the overall economy and the overall increased production numbers is something that is very healthy for the EVE economy. Let's also quickly talk about Plex here. So Plex is up 1%, but overall, if we look at the graph in game here, overall it has basically settled back in after the insane sales that we saw in April. We're back at 6.3 million, which it seems to be a fairly average number for the last year, and so for the last half year, I should say. And so that part of that is due to a Plex sale that we saw going on last week, and so I can see from your use of my creator code, thank you for doing that, but that that sale it seems to be quite popular, and a lot of people were taking advantage of that Plex sale to buy Plex, probably also based on the high Plex prices that we have seen recently due to the April sales in the New Eden store. If we look at skill injectors and skill extractors, so injectors still very low. The prices recovered quite quickly from the skill extractor sale, where a lot of skill farmers needed liquidity, so they sold a lot of their skill injectors. They've recovered now, but still, you're buying skill extractors here around the 830 mark, so that's really good and historically rather cheap. And I don't see these recovering that much from here, because the skill extractor 2-for-1 in April certainly drove down the cost base for skill farmers, and so that will also drive down the price of large skill injectors, because there's just going to be more of them, and skill farmers are going to be willing to sell them for less if their cost base is lower. So certainly that's more of a long-term negative outlook for skill injectors. And then last but not least, skill extractors. A lot of investors are going to wait for these to rise in price right now, and that hasn't happened. So yes, we saw the initial recovery back from the sub 400 million space, well into the 400 million space, but we have a long way to go for these to hit 500 million again. And that just means that a lot of ISK is going to be tied up in these skill extractors. It's going to be interesting to see at what point the skill farms run out of cheap extractors that they bought during the event, and at that point, when are the investors going to be willing to part with their skill extractors that they have invested in? And that's going to depend largely on when they invested and how much they value liquidity in the current environment. So interesting to see, but the skill extractor prices have not recovered yet. Let me mention a few other items here before we wrap up. One of them is the Macarial. So we talked about that earlier. If we're looking at items that are trending up, the Macarial is currently trending up, and there's various reasons for it. One is, clearly there's an increased Macarial demand if we're looking at daily trade volume yesterday. But also, the Macarial relies a lot on the on Angel LP, right? On the net resonators that you buy for LP from the Angel LP store, and we saw an Angel Dread be introduced during FanFest, and so that's going to be something that a lot of people are going to aspire for. That's a lot of things that people are going to want to produce, and so they are using their LP to buy blueprints and net resonators in the LP store, which will drive up the price. And that means that not only the Macarial, but also all of the other associated faction ships are going to be increasing in price. And so this increase in volume and price that we saw here yesterday in the Macarial could be either people genuinely buying Macarials because they need it, but it could be also market speculations that somebody just says, well, this LP is going to go up in price, and I'm going to buy out a lot of these Macarials. Macarial cost right now is about 1.3 billion, which is very expensive. 50 of them is, 65 billion ISK. That's nothing to sneeze at. So that's a rather big move there. Okay. Let me just quickly look at the dashboard again to see if we have anything else to write home about. Oh yeah, the last thing I want to mention is the Pyrolancia. So, we were talking about this earlier on stream. Overall, Pyrolancia drugs, they're very popular because they, increase your damage, for example, in the case of Pyrolancia, and they're not created in game. They're usually dropped through events or login campaigns, and clearly the sharp increase that we're seeing here is partly due because the Capsuleer event did not have Pyrolancia in the login campaign, and even the other ways of getting Pyrolancia through events and event sites and activities has been lower than expected. And so, Pyrolancia 1 is very, 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 very popular. You can see a daily trade volume of 2,500. A lot of people use these to run Abyssals, to run other sites, to just increase their damage, or as an emergency out. And certainly in PvP as well. So these are always needed, and if there's a blip in the supply or the projected supply from these events, then that's going to drive up the price. And so we saw a significant uptick in price there, and you can see in the last 2 weeks, Pyrolancia Dose 2, for example, that was still cheap, saw an increase in price. Pyrolancia 3 has more of a long time increase, but even there in the last few days we saw an uptick, and the very, very expensive Pyrolancia 4 is more flat, but these are very rare anyway. So yeah, and we obviously we can't leave a Capsuleer Day Oz report without looking at the praxis here, and so the praxis is something that is a very popular ship because it's alpha friendly, yet it's a very powerful battleship. And historically, one of these was given during a login campaign to each Omega account during Capsuleer Day. And this is not the case this year. You're not getting it for free. You have to actually run the sites, which is a huge, huge difference, right? Thank you, XD88 for the rate. Appreciate it. It's a huge difference between just giving it out for free or actually having to run these sites, right? And so that's why we saw the big price increase in April, and the market buyout, the clear market buyout that you see there with over 1,000 units, is that people immediately thought, hey, I'm going to buy a bunch of these very, very, very popular hulls because they're going to be in less supply than they are. I think the only reason the price has been dropping is because there are significant stockpiles out there. People like me have been buying up Praxis for years and years because they are so seasonal, right? And so you're going to have stockpiles for most of the year and then sell them at some point. But still very, very interesting to see what these economic shifts are doing to specific ships. And it's a testament to how popular the Praxis is, because clearly the demand is still there. Clearly we're still seeing about 100 to 200 trading every day. So, they're a little bit more expensive, but honestly, the price spike wasn't all that big. So Praxis is totally fine. Cool. All right, then that wraps up the Oz report for today, and we're going to go return to the regular stream, and I will see you guys on the Oz report next week.